Most people think you need a lot of money to get started in real estate, but I bought my first property with just $2,500 of my own money at just 22 years old. Although the average person doesn't know how to do this, the truth is that it's really simple. Anyone can do it. And if you keep watching, I'm going to show you exactly how it works. In this video, I'll break down the exact strategy I used to get that first deal with only 2,500 in just a few simple steps. By the end, you'll have a clear, actionable blueprint to buy properties with little to no money down. The best part is this is the same strategy I've used to build a real estate portfolio of $30 million, if, knock on wood, the two deals I'm currently under contract on close. So this scales very well. The first thing you have to know is this isn't the normal seller financing pitch where you lever yourself up to the eyeballs in debt. This method is better, safer, and doesn't even require debt at all if you don't want to use it. In fact, my first year deal used zero debt whatsoever. And by the way, if you want to see more on how I've scaled my portfolio from $2,500 to $30 million in AUM, hit the subscribe button, as I'll be posting a lot more videos about it and how you can use what I've done to do it yourself. So here's how I did it for my first deal at age 22. The first deal was a triplex that I bought for $203,000. It was a deal I bought fully renovated but vacant, and I sold it for a nice profit just over a year later, as you'll see in a bit. I had basically no money at the time. So what did I do? I used the private equity model. And I'll explain what this is in a minute, but I raised the money I needed from friends, family, anyone I could find. So of the 225K of total costs in the deal, closing costs and reserves were 22K roughly, I only put in 2,500. Since it was the first deal and I wanted to be safe, I didn't use debt either. So the entire rest of the capital stack was equity, but it wasn't my equity, it was investor equity. If I had used a typical deal structure with no private equity model, it would have included 75% debt, and I would have had to put the remainder in as equity, which would have been 25% or 56K. That may not seem like a lot, but it's actually 20x more than I put in. That was a fortune to me at the time. I would have never been able to get this deal done. It would have taken me years to save up enough money to have 50K of my own money for a down payment. And that's the other thing about this method. It buys you time as well. It allows you to start your business, right, your real estate business, years earlier than other people who aren't raising any money at all and have to do it with all their own money. This is a huge advantage. Back to the deal. It was then sold for over 50K profit under 2 years later. By the way, if you'd like to learn how to do deals like this, you can apply to work one-on-one with me on your own deals in the Acquisitions Bootcamp in the description below. So how does this private equity structure work so you can start buying deals with only a little of your own money? When you're buying a real estate deal, you have a few costs. Typically, you have the purchase price and the closing costs. You can choose how to fund these costs. The way in which you choose to fund them is called the capital stack. Generally, a capital stack looks something like this, but it doesn't have to look like that. You can fund deals any way you want. And this is what most beginners don't understand. You can be as creative as you want. You can structure a deal with 100% debt. I wouldn't advise that, but you can do it. You can structure a deal with 100% equity. You can do any combination in between. You can also source that equity and debt from any place. So just because you have to put equity into a deal doesn't mean that it has to be your equity. You can raise money for this piece of the deal from other people. It doesn't have to be yours. In fact, you don't have to put even a dollar in yourself if you don't want to. Basically, there should be a frame switch in your head from how can I personally save enough money to do this deal? That's where most people are stuck, to how can I meet people who'd be willing to fund my deal, right? Using other people's money to take the deal down. This is the private equity model. And once you learn it, it's hard to do deals in the other way. Essentially, how the structure works is you raise money from investors for the deal. Typically, you put in 10% of the equity and investors put in 90% of the equity. Then you take 20 to 30% of the profits over a hurdle rate, typically an 8% IRR, but not really important for the purposes of this. It not only allows you to take down deals with very little of your own capital, but it allows you to multiply your personal capital at insane rates as well, generally 3 to 7x every 3 years or so. I know that sounds absurd, but it's true. I've shown this in other videos too, if you'd like to see. Why is this method, the private equity model, so much better than seller financing? One is that it doesn't involve taking on more risk. Seller financing is debt. The more debt you take on, the more risk you take on. When you take on more equity, on the other hand, you don't take on any more risk. You just take on more responsibility. In this case, your responsibility to your investors. Huge difference. Two, the method's actually repeatable, which is very important as you try and scale. Seller financing isn't repeatable because if the seller says no, they won't finance it, you can't do the deal. Meanwhile, you can always raise equity for any deal. So how does this private equity structure work as you scale? I'm going to take you under the hood and show you exactly how it works for the $30 million worth of deals I currently own or I'm under contract on. I currently own one deal. Remember, I typically sell deals as soon as they stabilize, so I'm never really holding a large portfolio. So Water Street. This is a deal I've shown in prior videos. 30-room hotel, purchase price of $2.75 million, total investment including renovations of $4.1 million. This deal was done conservatively with low leverage, debt of only $2,075,000 and equity of $2,055,000. Of that equity, we as the private equity firm, I have partners, contributed roughly $600K or 30% of the equity. That was a very high percentage because we liked the deal. I'm also under contract on 2 deals. The first is Cowboy Street, which is a 104-unit deal I'm currently under contract on. The purchase price is $7.6 million, and the total investment is $8.9 million, including closing costs and renovations. Of that total investment, the equity is $4.1 million, and the debt is $4.8 million, roughly 56% of the deal. This is another deal that's conservatively levered. As I mentioned above, typical leverage or debt for a deal is generally around 75%. So this is significantly below that. Of that equity, we as the private equity firm are planning on putting in 10% or $410K, with our investors putting in the rest. The second is Ranch Street, which is a 146-unit deal I'm currently under contract on. The purchase price is $15.8 million, and the total investment is $17.6 million, including closing costs and renovations. Of that total investment, the equity is $5.8 million, and the debt is roughly $11.8 million, 67% or so of the deal. Of the equity, we as the private equity firm are planning on putting in 10% or $580K. So between these 3 deals that total over $30 million in AUM, we only put in $1.6 million or 5% or so of the total investment. And it's only that high because we really like the deals and wanted to put more money in. If we'd use the standard structure of 75% debt, 25% equity, and the private equity firm putting in 10% of the equity, we would have only needed to put in $750K or 2.5% of the total investment. That's how kind of powerful the private equity structure is. $750K in equity can get you to control over $30 million of assets. The average person would need 25% of the investment or $7.5 million of their own cash to get these deals done, literally 10x more. They also wouldn't get the pop we get with the promote. Remember that 20 to 30% of the profits that were allotted for finding, managing, and executing the deal that I talked about earlier. Because of that, we expect to at least 3x plus our equity in all 3 deals due to this structure. In reality, it should be closer to 5x if everything goes right. If you'd like to learn how to do this and how to make real money in real estate, apply for the Acquisitions Bootcamp in the description below.